Welcome back for Keeper of the Lost City's Lodestar, chapters 79 and 80. It's time. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Here we go. Every second felt like an hour, and by the time 8 minutes had passed, Sophie was ready to bang her head against the marble walls. She'd used 2 of those minutes to ditch her stupid dress and change into the simple black clothes she'd been wearing when she arrived. The rest she'd spent pacing and thinking. Whenever there were this many unanswered questions, it always meant they were missing something. And the one that bothered her the most was, how were the Neverseen planning to get out of their cells? She'd seen the sturdy locks, the heavy metal doors, and Luminite didn't burn, so Finton's power was useless. She'd tried to figure out what she would do if she were trapped, and her mind kept circling back to their recent skill training. The splotches she'd exploded, the stone she'd shattered. She traced her hand across the cold stones around her door. Coach Rahan had told her, "I suspect you could bring down a mountain if you sat in solitude long enough." Was that why Gethin had seemed so content in his cell? Had he been taking the time to rest and build his reserves to break through the door? A faint tremor shook the floor, and Sophie tried to tell herself her mind was playing tricks on her. But then she realized the crystal chandeliers were swaying. The motion was so subtle, she wouldn't have noticed it if she hadn't been paying attention. But she was paying attention. And as she watched, a tiny rustle made the crystals quiver again. Someone could be walking on the floor above her. Or the wind could be strong enough to shake the castle. Or 4 dangerous prisoners could be breaking out of their dungeon cells. But why now? If this was just about embarrassing the council in front of the other leaders, why not escape the second the summit began? This is what they want, Lady Gisela had told her. But she'd also told her something else. Something Sophie had thought was just a metaphor or hyperbole. But maybe it was another warning. Get my son back before it all comes crashing down. Keefe had told her that Finton wanted to take out the council. And here they were, all under one roof, the same roof as Gethin, and Gethin had had months to build his reserves. Gethin is where he belongs. The perfect inside man, hidden in one place they wouldn't have been able to get access to any other way. Maybe the person they'd been counting on to deliver. But if Gethin brought down the castle, wouldn't they all be crushed in the rubble? Finton had known the council would arrest him. He'd said as much to Aubrey. He'd also stalled the proceedings, making sure it all happened on his timeline. And he wasn't suicidal, so why would he want to be down in the dungeons when it happened? Why would he order Brand and Rye to get themselves captured? Rye. A powerful psionopath could shield them under a force field, keep them alive, make sure they survived. It was sickening how perfectly everything had been planned. And even worse, how many clues she'd missed. The warning signs had been there all along, and she hadn't paid close enough attention. The floor shook again, telling her the time to wonder was over. This was happening, and the tremors were only the beginning. "Keefe," she transmitted, "if you can hear me, make sure you stay away from the castle. Gethin's going to knock it down. That's Finton's vision." She sent the same transmission to Mr. Forkel, begging him to start evacuating. Then she pounded on her door, demanding the guards let her out. When no one answered, she gathered her mental strength and imagined singing the energy into the lock and the stones around it. Deeper and deeper the power sank, coiling so tight it felt like a wound-up spring. All she had to do was let it go. The explosion knocked her back, but she caught herself on the nearby table, her whole body shaking as she stared at the rubble around her now open door. If she could cause that much destruction with so little practice or energy, this was what they wanted. She bolted down the hallway as the floor rumbled again, trying to figure out the best plan. She could fight her way to the dungeon, but it would be 4 against 1, and she might not get there in time. The next tremor was sharper, sending dust swirling through the air. Too strong to be ignored, but too weak to be felt by anyone else, especially a bunch of people higher up at the party. Nibbling treats and admiring the splendor and congratulating themselves on the day's victory. And somewhere among them was Adeline. Sophie changed direction, her goal clear, as she doubled her speed, ducking down halls at random. The maze felt alive, stretching and spreading and shifting. Anything to prevent her from getting where she needed to be. A staircase looked familiar, but most of the doors it led to were locked. She finally chose a path through a hall lined with blue flames, hoping the light was a good sign. The longer she ran, the more the tremors grew, until she could see cracks fishing through the stone. The dust made her chest throb and her eyes water, or maybe that was the panic, as she started screaming Adeline's name. More doorways, more stairs, more halls, more quakes gaining momentum like distant thunder rolling in with a storm. She tried to track Adeline with her mind, but her ear shattered her concentration. She'd nearly broken down when she recognized a new sound. Footsteps. "Adeline! Sophie!" Mr. Forkel shouted. She sprinted towards the sound, taking a flight of stairs 3 at a time before she crashed hard into his bloated belly. "Is Adeline with you?" she gasped. "No, she went looking for you. Orley ordered all the goblins out of the dungeon after she was talking to your mother, but none of them obeyed it back, and then the shaking started. That explained why there'd been no guard outside her door. She couldn't think about what that might mean for poor Righty and Bunhead. The counselors are trying to clear the castle," Mr. Forkel said, grabbing her arm and spinning her around. "I'll show you the fastest way to the exit." Sophie jerked out of his grip. "Not until I find Adeline." "Hopefully that's where she's waiting for you. I told her that if I found you, I'd send you there." But there was no sign of Adeline at the exit. "I'll find her," Mr. Forkel promised. "Go to the beach and go as far as you can. It's hard to know where the rumble will fall." "I'm not leaving without my mom." He blocked her from charging past him. "We both know that's not what she would want. Go somewhere safe. I'll find her and get her out." "How can you be so sure?" "I found you, didn't I?" Technically, she'd found him. But this wasn't a time for technicalities. It was a time for action, and hope, and trust. So she did as he asked, and made her way to the courtyard. But when she looked at the once gleaming castle, now dull with wavering walls and light leaking through the cracks, she couldn't walk away. She couldn't risk a lifetime of wondering, what if I'd stayed? She turned and raced back in, keeping her left hand on the wall, hoping it'd help her find her way out when she needed the exit. Faster and faster she ran as the dust and pebbles pelted her, the ground splitting beneath her feet, her balance mostly held. But one particularly hard jolt knocked her over, and she cried out as her knees crashed onto sharp ground. "Sophie!" Adeline shouted. "Is that you?" Just like that, she was on her feet again, coughing as she ran, lungs burning, hair flying, and then there was Adeline. Dusty and panting, her once lovely gown now filthy and shredded. She threw her arms around Sophie, hugging her even as she dragged her back the way she'd come. "We have to go." They ran as fast as they could, but it wasn't fast enough. They'd just reached one of the widest halls when the floor collapsed beneath them, whipping their hearts into their throats as they plummeted. They crashed into the next level down, stones raining all around them, one piece big enough to crush and kill. Sophie watched it fall, trying to knock it back with her telekinesis, but it had too much momentum. It would have landed right on top of them if Adeline hadn't snapped her fingers, conjuring it away. "Whoa, that's intense," Adeline said, shaking from the effort. "I've never done something that big in the void, but it worked. Come on, this place is coming down fast." They'd only gone a few steps when a tremor split the wall, sending more stones hurling toward them. Adeline snapped her fingers and conjured the enemy away, but the effort took a huge toll. "Here," Sophie said, ripping off her gloves. "It'll make you stronger." Adeline pulled her close. "We'll get through this, I promise." "Together," Sophie told her, as she and Adeline pushed forward. Step by fumbling step, they made their way through the maze, and Adeline used her enhanced strength to conjure away anything that tried to crush them. Eventually, they spotted a crack that offered a teasing glint of the ocean. It wasn't wide enough to fit through, But Sophie sang the last of her energy into the stone, blasting their way outside to the cold, misty air. With the final dredges of energy, they scrambled over the glowing destruction and kept crawling and crawling until they reached a sandy clearing where the waves drowned out most of the noise. "I think we'll be safe here," Sophie whispered, curling closer to Adeline to keep warm. Adeline tangled her arms around her, quietly sobbing onto Sophie's shoulder. Sophie held her tight, promising it was almost over, as she watched the dark waves roll across the shore. She was about to close her eyes when she spotted 4 figures crossing the beach in long black cloaks. When she blinked, they were gone. Chapter 80. "There you are," a choked voice said, and Sophie slowly forced herself back to consciousness. It hurt to focus through all the grit and dust flooding up her poor dry eyes. But after a few seconds, the world sharpened, and she found a beautiful blonde boy leaning over her. Keefe's smile was both somehow breathtaking and heartbreaking, but it faded as he stroked her cheeks and whispered, "When you and Adeline weren't with the survivors." "Adeline!" Sophie gasped, and blood flooded her brain as she sat up too quickly. She breathed through the rush in her head, searching the clearing until "She looks okay," Keefe said, squatting beside Adeline and using his dirty tunic to clean some red off her bruised cheek. Adeline stirred at the touch, but not enough to wake up, and Sophie decided to let her sleep. "Did everyone make it out?" she whispered. I know Counselor Terrick's hurt pretty bad. I guess he might lose part of his leg, or maybe he lost it already. I couldn't tell. I saw the blood and I bolted so I wouldn't hurl all over everyone. But Elwyn was working on him, so hopefully he'll be okay. Physics here, too. Most of the injuries look pretty minor. Just cuts and scratches. Broken bones. Nothing life-threatening. Though I heard a lot of the goblins were down in the dungeon when it happened, and so far none of them have come back up. Sophie shuddered. The motion made her cough. She was pretty sure she'd be coughing up Luminite forever. And Keefe scooted closer, patting her back until the fit calmed. She leaned against him, soaking up his warmth. "How bad do I look?" "You could never look bad, but, He brushed a finger across her forehead and showed her the red. "Want me to take you to Elwyn?" "No, he should work on the urgent cases first. Is Grady here, or Fitz or Biana?" "The island's on lockdown, even for friends and family, until the dwarves stabilize the ruins. Though Biana managed to sneak over for a couple of minutes. Vanishers. She was looking for you guys and totally tackled me when she saw me. I guess she didn't realize I'd already left the Never Seen, so there was a lot of threatening and punching, but I deserved it. I deserve so much worse." His throat closed off, and it took several tries to clear it. "All those months with them, thinking I was playing everything perfectly. I bet they were onto me the whole time, just like my mom said. And they were planning this." He punched the sand, sending it spraying around them. Sophie held him tighter. "This is not your fault, Keefe. None of us realized what they were up to." "Yeah, but I was living with them, helping them, and all I have to show for it is this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 clear glass marbles, one with 7 colorful tiny crystals set inside, the other with 9. "You stole the caches?" Sophie whispered, watching them roll around in his palm. Together, the 2 gadgets contained 16 forgotten secrets. It was the only thing that went right about my escape, and I was so smug about it. But who cares? I mean, seriously, who cares about a bunch of dusty old secrets when people can do that? He gestured behind her to the ruined castle. "It's still huge," Sophie promised. "I know it doesn't feel like it. But the secrets in those caches have to be important. That's a victory." "A pretty weak one," he grumbled, trying to look away. She reached up and turned his chin back, waiting for him to meet her eyes. "You have to let this go. Don't let this ruin what we have here." "What do we have?" She ignored the darkness, treading his tone. "We have a new start, a new lead, A new weapon in this fight. Also, a new world. At the thought, Sophie forced herself to finally look back at the destruction. The majestic castle was nothing more than a few jagged pieces. When she squinted at it, she could almost imagine. It was a giant, gnarled hand reaching out of the ground as the beast it belonged to tried to claw its way to freedom. It also looked like a message. The Neverseen had just told the whole world that they were the ones to be feared. "You should probably transmit to Fitz that you're okay," Keefe said quietly. "I hadn't found you when I saw Bianna." He looked away, wiping his eyes. "If you hadn't been okay." "But I am," she assured him. She closed her eyes, picturing Fitz's handsome face as she transmitted, "I'm okay, and so is Adeline. Please tell Grady for me. I promise I'll let you know more soon." "Okay, I'll let Fitz know," she told Keefe. "Have you seen Mr. Forkel?" Keefe flinched at the name. "What?" she asked. The anguish on his face told her everything she needed to know. "Hey," Keefe said, holding her steady as she struggled to stand. "He's not dead, okay? He's just missing." "But he's missing because of me. I made him go back to find Adeline, and then I went back and found her anyways." Deep breaths, Foster. Try to remember that you were the one missing a few minutes ago, and yet you're fine. There's a lot of beach to search, and a lot of debris to sort through. She tried to see it like that, but the nausea wouldn't fade. "Is anyone else missing?" she asked, trying to prepare herself for the worst. But she definitely was not ready for him to whisper, "Orly." Her world spun upside down and inside out. "We have to find them." She was half crying, half hyperventilating as she stumbled forward and immediately collapsed. "Okay, how about you lean on me and we'll start searching the beach," Keefe offered. She shook her head. "We can't afford to waste time. If they're hurt..." She closed her eyes, letting her concentration brew and bubble before she stretched her mind across the space of the island. She could feel a ton of people on the beach, but no one was who she was looking for. So she fanned her thoughts toward the ruins, and I can feel something. It's weak, but it's there. "Can you isolate it? We can tell the dwarves, and as soon as they've secured the structure, they'll go in." "What do you mean, as soon as they've secured the structure?" "King Inky said it's not safe for anyone to go in right now. All the parts that are still standing have big cracks compromising their integrity, so there's no way to know if the whole thing is going to come down, especially in this wind. He said he'd have it secure by sunset." "That's too long," Sophie said. "They have to be hurt, otherwise why aren't they here?" Keefe tore his hands through his hair, shaking loose dust and sand. "What are the odds of me talking you out of this?" "Definitely none." "Then I guess I'm coming with you." He glanced at Adeline, who was still sleeping restlessly. "She's going to freak when she wakes up." Sophie nodded and wrote, "I'm okay. Went to find Forkel," in the sand, hoping this note would cause less trouble than her last one. And she headed for the rubble. "Not that way," Keefe said, grabbing her hand and dragging her into the shadows. "The dwarves are working just around that bend. If they spot us, they'll make sure we don't get anywhere near the castle. We'll need to sneak around the back and find another way in." They didn't talk as they walked. Sophie was too busy trying to hold on to whatever weak connection she had found to guide them. "That looks pretty sturdy," Keefe said, pointing to an arched doorway half blocked by a fallen pillar. "Think you can run for it? We'll want to make sure we're not seen." "Yeah, just give me a second." She took a couple of breaths and channeled some extra energy into her legs. "Okay." Keefe nodded, peeking around the corner. "I think we're clear. Ready? Go!" The ground seemed to shift under their feet, but the entrance held steady as they ducked inside into the dark, dusty hallway. "We need to find a way up," Sophie whispered, trying not to think about the tightness in her chest, seeing the cracked walls and door dredged in flashbacks of the collapse. "It feels like they're above us." Keefe squeezed her hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," but she was glad he didn't let go as he took the lead, carving out a precarious path through the maze. The staircase they found was too crumbling to trust, What if we levitate? Keefe asked, pointing to where the center of the stairs had caved in. It might be our best shot, but only if you're up for it. I'm up for it, Sophie said, rallying her concentration again. Keefe held tight as they floated, and she had a feeling he was carrying her more than she was lifting herself. But she still fought to push against gravity as hard as she could. We need to stop here, she whispered. It's this level. She pointed left, and Keefe took the lead again. So, a quick question, he said, as they picked up their pace through an especially dark hallway. Is there a reason I keep getting this crazy rush every time I touch your hand? He cleared his throat when he realized how that sounded. What I mean is, your emotions always feel strong, but now they're on another level. It's because I manifested as an enhancer. I'm supposed to wear gloves, but I took them off to help Adeline. She figured he'd picked his most creative I told you so, and glowed about knowing she'd manifested another ability. Instead, all he said was, so that rush was an even clearer reading of your emotions? Probably. Why? No reason. But when she stole a glance at the side of her eye, she could see a glint of a grin in the dim light. She was deciding whether to ask him about it when a strained voice called, Is someone there? Orly! Sophie shouted, racing towards the sound. She hurtled bits of wall and furniture until she reached a crushed golden doorway. Inside was a disaster zone of toppled tables and cracked jeweled trees and twisted balustrades and fallen chunks of starry sky. The air was heavy, with the scent of dusty stone and spoiled food, and something decidedly iron. Over here! Orly shouted, and they found her, in the clearest corner, leaning over a dark shape. Her hands looked glossy and red, and they were pressing on. No! Sophie shouted, wobbling so hard Keefe had to keep her from collapsing. The shape beside Orly moved, lifting its head and confirming Sophie's horrible suspicions. You kids really shouldn't have come, Mr. Forkle wheezed. That concludes chapter 80. I'll see you tomorrow for 81 and 82.